On this episode of Interview in Indies, we talk to Dylan and May from Red Nexus Games. We talk about their recent released game Fowl Damage and the 1.0 release of Peglin, and a little bit of game development in Canada. If you want to support the show and get it a few days early, you can subscribe to us on Patreon, and of course, enjoy the show. Hello, welcome to Interview in Indies, episode 10. I'm the host, Burr, and today I'm joined by Dylan and May from Red Nexus Games. Good to have both of you here. Thanks for joining the podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thanks for having us.
Now, Dylan, you're the CEO of Red Nexus Games, so I guess first and foremost, what's the process of making a company, I guess, for indie games?
Yeah, I mean, we were really a game first, and a company kind of second. Um, I did start the company back in like 2016 when May and I actually worked on our first game together, Friday Night Bullet Arena, which is a game that she had fully designed and mostly developed, and then I kind of stepped in at the end to help out. And I had started the company kind of with my own indie aspirations and had kind of, gotten caught in the legal and business quagmire of how do I actually get a game onto Steam. Coming from Canada, you kind of needed a bit more company support at that time rather than just being like a sole proprietorship. So it just kind of made sense for us to come together and do that work. Unfortunately, that game wasn't super commercially successful, so we kind of each went our separate ways. I kept the company running because it was a good portfolio piece for us to have released a game on Steam and Xbox. And we were out kind of looking for other jobs and such. And then at some point in that time, I started working on Peglin, and May started working on Fowl Damage. And now we've kind of come back together again to release both games.
Yeah, both of those games, I would say Peglin has been a pretty big success, and Foul Damage is still in the works. So, May, what was your story? Like, how did you meet Dylan, and what's your background with making games?
I met Dylan in university, so almost like a decade ago now. But I've been kind of just making games forever. Before I knew how to do it on a computer, I would make pen and paper games and force my parents to play them or whoever sat next to me on the bus. Um, I found GameMaker in high school, and that was just like, holy crap! Like I can make video games, and it was just did not slow down from there. Um, so I'd already made a lot of terrible little games by the time I got to university, where I met Dylan, and we were in a club together, a game development club. So that's kind of where we met and honed our skills a bit more, and then started working together.
Yeah, I was trying to do research on both of you. Dylan was a little harder to find some past games on, but May, you had a good amount of games on itch.io and
Mm-hmm.
game jams. Do you have any favorite games from that time besides maybe Foul Damage, because that's the one that turned into a real game? Any favorites that you might want to pick up again?
Oh, I don't know about picking up again, but there's a period of time where I was really trying to make 3D games in GameMaker, which is not really what it's suited for. But I do really like what I put together for that kind of era. Very like low poly, unlit, um, 3D aesthetic, which I like. And it was a lot of fun to try and like make GameMaker work in 3D. So there's a few games there that I did game jams of. Like one called Wonks, where you got these little claspy robot hands, so you go around picking up seeds and bringing them to a robot, and yeah.
I mean, I've talked with a lot of devs who have also done a lot of game jams. It's always fun to see the growth that they have from the beginning of a game jam to their latest project. And speaking of growth, we can ask Dylan about his first initial project that he did start before meeting you, May. And Dylan, are you ever gonna get back to the original game, the Shipwreck League?
That is a very good question. It definitely haunts me. I think one of the big problems with it is, it's really from an era of like creating projects in like Warcraft 3, like custom editor, where you kind of have so many systems built in already. You've got basic AI for units, they path well, they work well together. You've got all these different systems that you can kind of just tap into easily. And so building something like that from scratch, trying to get to the point where you can even identify if it's fun or not, is heavy. So at some point, I'd like to just, take a week or take a weekend and just see how much of it I can knock out and see if I can get to that point and be like, is this a fun idea? But yeah, it haunts me for sure. It's sitting in that pile of just unfinished projects.
I guess I could ask this to both of you, but is your pile of unfinished projects, is that a common game developer thing? You just have a million projects everywhere?
Oh,
Oh
definitely.
yeah,
If not
yeah,
like actual started like Unity or Game Maker projects, like just the ideas, right? Because we've been working on Peglin I've been working on Peglin for 5 years now. And so in that time, there's just so many little things that you pop up. You're playing some new game and you're like, oh, but what if this, but then this? And it's crazy. So something that's like kind of endearingly frustrating is when you get an email and it's from an excited gamer and they're like, listen, like I've got the idea. It's going to make us millions of dollars. I just need you to build the entire thing. It's like, I got ideas too, man, and
yeah.
they take
We're
5 years to build. Like,
we're pretty
it's
well stocked
not
on
how it
ideas.
works. Yeah, the ideas are not the hard part.
Yeah,
It's just the execution's the hard part for sure.
yeah.
Now, you said Friday Night Bullet Arena wasn't really a commercial success. I've never played it personally, but is there
I,
anything you wish you did different when the game was done? Either of you?
I'll let you
yeah, I
start
think.
there.
Oh yeah, I think when I was working on it, I was kind of like I was really scared about if it was enough of a real game, and I think that like we put a lot more into it before than we needed to. Um, like there was a minimum viable product very early on. We should have just put that out there, and then when it didn't go anywhere, realize okay, what's next, rather than like no, we just need to put another year into it. We just need to put this into it. We just need to put that into it. If we just give it enough levels, it'll like have a chance. Sort of, it's hard to recognize what that minimum viable product is in the moment, but I feel like if we just could have been like, all right, this is already playable, it's already fun. Let's see if it sticks. Oh, it didn't stick. Let's just keep rolling. Let's keep that momentum going. Because it was after how thin we stretched ourselves to get across that finish line and how little of a return there was. That was pretty crushing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty like turbulent time in the games industry as well. Just, the game started in green light, which a lot of younger game
Yeah.
designers will never have to deal with. And it was kind of the era back then of, if you get a game on Steam and it's half decent, if it's not just complete an asset flip or shovelware, then you should make X amount of dollars. And this was kind of just as things were changing and Steam was opening up, and that was no longer becoming true. So as for things that we would have done differently, like, there's a lot in retrospect, but just we couldn't have known at the time. There was less resources for, how you even go about marketing a game on Steam because Steam was so much of a closed platform at the time. And yeah, I would say as a student game, it's really excellent. And yeah, as May said, if we had kind of kept it to just being released while we were still in university, because we kind of let it bleed into afterwards, it would have gone great. It was a finalist for a couple of awards. It was like critically received very well. But yeah, we just had a really tough time getting it out in front of people.
Yeah, that always seems to be
Mhm.
the biggest struggle for a lot of indie devs, especially ones that are self-published like both of y'all. I'm pretty sure Red Nexus Games has published both Peglin and Fowl Damage. Do you have any reasons why you didn't go for a publisher?
I actually applied to about a dozen publishers for Peglin, indie publishers that I thought would have been a really good fit, and they just had no interest in the game at the time. And then, I just kept plucking away at it. For me, it was mostly a hobby project. I was kind of looking for some fundings that I could quit the day job and make an actual effort on it. And just no bites. And then I just kept on working on the game and developing it. And eventually it started getting accepted into showcases and such. And, a couple of those publishers kind of came back and were like, hey, we found your email in our pile. But by then, the game was already well on its way. So why bother? I think in the future, we'll probably work with a publisher just to help offload the workload. Obviously, Peglin has been decently successful to help us, fund another game or two. But it's just our specialty is really in design and development, less so actual game marketing. And there's a lot of things for Peglin that we just got really really lucky on.
Any reasons for you made going the? Well, I guess you went the Red Nexus publishing for Fowl Damage. Was that just the easiest method?
Yeah, I mean, we're already working together, and Fowl Damage is already 80 to 90% done. I've been working on it I started in 2018, worked on it for a few years pretty steady, and then it just ended up on the back burner. So sort of, well, this game's already mostly done. We just need to kind of like, get the last 10% that takes more than 10% of the time. Just if both can get it finished, it'd be a shame to kind of let this mostly finished product go to waste. So kind of just made sense to kind of keep it in-house for me.
That does make a lot of sense. Now, before I get more into the guess the meat and bones of Peglin and Fowl Damage, I guess I can ask this because you guys are based in British Columbia, if I'm not mistaken. Do you
Yes.
feel like studio location, even if it's all like in your own apartment, do you feel it's vital in indie game development to have like cheaper cost of living? Because I know British Columbia can be a pretty expensive place to help keep your funds down, I guess.
I mean, it certainly helps. BC is not the cheapest place, but we do have a lot of supports for things like tax credits and everything that, don't really help you get the game off the ground, but help you keep the salaries coming out once the games are out and making money. Yeah, I do kind of live in the middle of nowhere, which is decently cheap, which is kind of nice. There was an 8-month period for Peglin where I'd quit my day job because it was clear that there was something here and I was just burning off my savings. And there's a big difference between where I live about 4 hours east of Vancouver versus being in downtown Vancouver. That would have, I think, by the end of the 8 months, my savings were pretty much depleted, so I wouldn't have had the same amount of time in Vancouver. So there's pros and cons for sure. Potentially being around the industry there, I would have actually been able to make a publisher connection and get funding earlier just because you're meeting people in person. Or just having the support of other indies, it might have gotten things moving faster. But in general, yeah, the less money going out, the kind of more time you have to spin your wheels and work on things.
Yeah, I just remembered I have one more question. This is definitely for both of you. You both went to the Tokyo Game Showcase back in the beginning of the month. How was the time there?
Yeah, it was very cool to get to go to the Tokyo Game Show. Yeah, I got to show the game at it was pretty busy, but we were kind of in the indie corner, which was a bit more quiet. Which like pros and cons to that. It was nice not to be in like the sea of humanity, but also it's like come play our game.
Yeah, I never actually went over to the busy spot in the consumer days. The Tokyo Game Show is split up to industry days and consumer days, and even the industry days were quite busy. But I think the consumer days, when everyone's allowed to go, is like 3 times busier. It was something like that.
Yeah,
And like, yeah, I didn't go into the zoo, which would have had 100,000 people packed into a not a big enough space. But yeah, it was a busy show, but it was pretty enjoyable.
Were you showcasing both Peglin and Fowl Damage there?
No,
that
it
was
was
just
just
Foul
Foul
Damage with that one.
Damage. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. Peglin was in their showcase, but it was fully digital back in the time. It was during COVID, so yeah, we didn't get to have the same opportunity to go over to Japan for it last time.
Maybe you still got to go to Japan this time, which is pretty cool. You make a game and you get to showcase it off in a whole different country, different culture. That's got to be pretty awesome, right?
It's really neat, yeah.
yeah.
And at this point, we've got a few friends in Japan that are quite fluent, and so they came out and helped interpret at our booth. And that goes a really, really long way when you're showing the game off in another country.
Now, would you go to any more gaming conventions, like the more well-known ones in the West, like PAX, maybe DreamHack? I don't know how indie they are, but would you showcase the games off in other conventions if you could?
Yeah, we've done a couple of dream hacks. They've been kind enough to let us in for free with like dual booths of Peglin and Fowl Damage, because they've got some really good support for indie developers there in partnership with the IGDA. And then Fowl Damage was also in the PAX Rising showcase at PAX West, so we did have a little booth there, and that was quite a fun show. I thought they organized that really, really well, and that's one that we've been going to as consumers and developers for the past 12 years for me. And so to actually have a game in there on the show floor was a really cool experience.
Oh yeah, I absolutely love PAX. I went to PAX East a lot more because I was from Boston. I live in Alberta now. We're neighbors basically. But I definitely want to go back to PAX West because there's always so many great indie games that you get to see. So now I guess we can talk about Peglin. In the credits for Peglin, it says there's 4 original creators from Red Nexus Games, and then obviously May is in there for additional art. So I guess I could ask May first. How much work did you get to contribute towards Peglin?
Yeah, I feel like at this point I've been working on Peglin for over 2 years, I guess. I've got a decent amount of stuff in there. A lot of it is UI. There's a few items I've helped with just at times where we were really busy. Like, oh, okay, we really need to get this out. And Sienna, our main artist, usually does all the orbs and items, relics. But there's been a few times where I've come in to help her with those. But yeah, a lot of new UI at the time, being this game that came from a game jam and that released in early access, just sort of like, anyways, we can get into that maybe, but the original idea of the early access was just more to sort of, we had some pre-existing fans with the demo, let's get them in, and it just exploded. So especially a lot of the UI was sort of just these asset pack, boxes and stuff, and so I've had fun going in there and trying to, make things a bit more bespoke, a bit more Peglin, a bit more unique. Just recently, we released the Encyclopedia and then the bestiary in it, which was a big undertaking. That's a lot of UI. So it's everything from mocking it up to then working with a programmer on the implementation and drawing all the new art assets it would need for its UI. And yeah, it's fun. It's a pretty UI heavy game. It's also a more system designy kind of game. I've gotten to make spreadsheets a few times, which usually when I'm working by myself, I love making little platformers. I love figuring, deciding how high a guy should jump. Don't really need a whole lot of spreadsheets or UI for that. It's been a nice change of pace.
Yeah, Peglin, definitely not any platformer compared to Fowl Damage. That game can frustrate me at times. Now, Peglin was in early access for a couple years. Dylan, you probably started off alone because you said everyone's, went their separate ways for a little bit. Do you feel like there's a sweet spot for how long a game should be in early access? Because Peglin kind of exploded right out the bat, I feel like.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think what a lot of game developers make a mistake of is thinking that like they can just do early access whenever, go into early access whenever, and then be working towards their big 1.0 release. But on Steam in particular, like it treats early access as at least half of your big major release. And so you have to be like ready for that. Like for Peglin, we had about 60,000 wish lists like 2 weeks before our early access launch. And so, we knew that there was like a certain amount of like interest and attention focused on the game. And, we probably went into early access a little bit too early. But, it obviously worked out pretty well for us. And I don't think people were too upset. Like our reviews were pretty decent when we launched. They've been sitting at around like 80% positive pretty much the entire time since the game's been out. But yeah, it was a bit stressful. We'd been treating our demo as like an open alpha up until that point. And so we already had players kind of like watching for each new demo update. And we were kind of, we were already treating it like a live service game. So it made sense that once all 3 areas were complete to kind of make that the early access launch. But yeah, it was still pretty rough around the edges. I mean, it's still, not exactly where we want it. We kind of called it 1.0 to coincide with the Switch release and the completion of the Crucible. But yeah, we still have a decent amount of work that we're planning on doing on the game.
Just had to, at some point we had to draw the line. Some people on the team have been working on this for 5 years. Like, okay, I think we're 1.0. We're gonna, and like we made it clear we're gonna keep working on it. But like at this point, we feel like we've fulfilled the,
there's
original
enough
idea.
content to justify 1.0. You got all the original ideas out, like you said. Now, I guess I could ask the difficulty enhancers in the game, the crucibles. I know a lot of people, I've read reviews, a lot of people say there's a lot of RNG involved. The runs become so unfair the later you get into it. I've just beat Crucible 9 this morning, actually. What's the process like making difficulty enhancers that, are fair, fun, and also a challenge?
Yeah, I mean, you just want to put the squeeze on, especially for Peglin. Like our base level is a bit easier than a lot of other roguelikes. Like if somebody downloads the game and is able to beat it on their first or second try, like that's not that's not a bad thing in our eyes. We want that base level to just be really just fun and relaxing. And if you've got any semblance of synergy in there, you just kind of like aim almost wherever and just watch the explosions take place, and then away you go. So the Crucible is really in there so that people can kind of find their sweet spot of what kind of challenge they want. Unfortunately, like a lot of people's pride kind of prevents them from doing that, and if they're not playing on the absolute highest level, which is just kind of meant to be painful, like it took me about a year to beat Slay the Spire's like final ascension level, and it's like by the time I finally did it, it was such an accomplishment. And I felt, just so good about it. And so we're kind of, I don't think it should take a year. A lot of people beat it in the first like week or so, but you want those challenge levels there for the people that are looking for them, right?
Oh, most definitely. Which I guess can lead to me asking a quick little personal question, because I imagine you both played a good amount of Peglin being the developers. Do you have any go-to runs with the type of orbs? Like you like Spintation, Multi-Ball? I'm personally a multi-ball fan, but any fan favorites for you guys?
I feel like I'm not allowed to pick favorites, and we are always kind of like rotating them. Like bomb builds have been increasingly difficult to pull off recently. So our next update's going to have just a kind of suite of small improvements there to kind of help bring those back into the meta. Yeah, I mean, I do really like status effects. I like how they're kind of a bit like rolling a dice, but then if you get land bramble on something that's approaching you, it's just such a good feeling, and a bit more of that kind of gambly aspect. But yeah, it's the idea is that each class kind of has their own identity, and then you can kind of pick and choose whatever you're feeling. So sometimes like I don't want to gamble. I just want to be Balladin and build up my strength and then smash things in the head. That's okay too.
I will pick favorites. I like Morbid. I like Orb CM with the multi-hit. Like I like that kind of like getting more than one use out of an orb. Durable, all that kind of good stuff. I think that's my favorite
Oh, I'm with you
synergy
on
personally.
that. I love the durable ones. With those pegs are 3 times, get a multi-ball in there, the damage just goes up forever.
Oh,
You're
yeah.
just watching it for like a minute, and you're like, oh my god. Then you kill the boss in one hit, and you feel terrific. Oh yeah, I'm with you on that
And then
one.
sometimes you get a board where it's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm. Oh.
Yeah. Now, one thing I noticed in the credits was a lot of translation. So, like, you can play Peglin in a lot of different languages, which I think is fantastic. How much of a priority was that for you?
I would just say that like the early development of Peglin was just so community based, right? Like I was doing it as a hobby. The game was like the entire game, which was just the forest at the time, was available for free on Steam as a demo. And it was just kind of this iterative development. I would go on most weeknights, especially during COVID, and just work for a couple of hours after my day job and push out what I had. And then we would have people kind of coming in and discussing the changes. And so we had like community-based localization kind of spring out of that, where people that were in there already playing the game like almost every day were just like, I really want to share this game with my friends, but they only speak Swedish. So do you mind? Like, is there a way for me to do that? And I was like, well, that's a cool idea. And you found an asset on the Unity asset store that handled most things for us, and I kind of hooked it up in a day or two. And then early localizations were just all community based, and it worked pretty well for a while. Obviously, once the game exploded and we started adding way more text, it became a bit trickier, especially with languages that have like almost a dozen different localizers that, somebody's worked on it for a month and then that was it. They never came back, and other people have been continuous, and we don't really have a good way to like attribute that, which is much to my chagrin. I wish that we could have better focus on who actually has helped us do the work and everything. But yeah, it is really cool having the game available in so many languages, even if it kind of makes certain development decisions a bit trickier.
Yeah, with UI, I always gotta think about, okay, well this fits in English, but will it fit in German or French or Russian? Just languages with longer words. Oh, how's this gonna look with the like fonts for Japanese or Korean or Chinese? Often those will behave in slightly different ways that you're not quite used to. That just comes down to fonts and text boxes. So I always have to test UI in multiple languages, but it's fun. It's worth it.
Yeah, there's a lot
I had
of
to spend so much time on the pixel fonts, just making sure
Yeah,
that they looked decently crisp in all languages. And we'd never really be 100% of the way there, just because sometimes you need to scale text not in like an integer kind of multiplier,
hmm
and it'll always be a little fuzzy if you do that with pixel fonts. So that's a bit of a pain there, but well.
you got it working. I guess that can lead to another, probably maybe a hard port to do, but getting Peglin onto mobile, was that a top priority because of how big the mobile market is?
No, it had nothing to do with the market at all. I really wanted to do PC and then console and then mobile, because mobile needs a lot of additional love, both in their SDKs for supporting things like cloud saves and in UX, and in there's still a ton of like better control scheme that we want to loop back and add in. But what happened was we just kept on having people like decompile our Steam demo and then upload that onto like the mobile app stores and charge money for it. And so we're getting angry emails from people being like, I spent $5 and your port is horrible. Like it's barely playable, and if I somehow manage to beat the first area, it's just the demo. Like, where's the full game? And it's like, well, we didn't do that. First of all, the name is just some random company, whatever. And like the Google was pretty good about this. I would send in a DMCA takedown, and I would wake up the next morning and it would be gone. Apple would give the other developer like 4 weeks to contest it, and then that developer would like do nothing. At the end of the 4 weeks, they would finally take it down. A week later, that developer would put it up again, and they didn't seem to have like a 3 strike system or anything. Like they would never ban these developers. And so I finally just like threw up my hands, and I was like, okay, we'll spend 3 weeks. Like, it's unfortunate because at the time we were doing like weekly updates on PCs. That's a lot of time taken away from that. We'll take 3 weeks. We'll just do it ourselves. And thankfully, it's like once we did that, the problem went away, and it's been good. It's really nice when we're at conventions and stuff, and we just have a QR code. And just hey, you're gonna go wait in that big line. Like, why don't you try this game while you're there? But I do regret that it isn't like the experience that we kind of set out to build. And thankfully, its reviews on there are okay. I think we're sitting at about 4 stars, so the game is playable. But I do look forward to the day when we're kind of like done with our other content updates and could just go and like actually make it a good solid experience.
I guess I can ask May this with the mobile. Is it as annoying trying to make everything perfect on mobile like it was with the translation?
Well, we kind of just haven't really bothered all that much yet. There was a few things where where the fonts are tough, especially those pixel fonts. We had a few. I think I'm trying to remember. It doesn't really matter exactly what it was, but I was working on some new UI for. I think it was like inspecting details about an item or an orb, and it was just like oh, I'll do it at this size, right? I'll make it like 1-to-1 scale or something. And we get on the phone, you literally cannot read anything. It's like Orbalisk level 1. Um, So yeah, there's been a couple of times, I guess, where it's been, oh no, actually I need to make everything 1.5 or 2 times bigger because you literally cannot read anything on phones.
Yeah,
But for the most part, we're kind of just like, as long as it's passable, and hopefully we'll get to it later and make it like nice and not just passable.
I mean, 4 stars out of 5. That's definitely passable in my eyes. Now, Peglin on mobile wasn't a priority, but you said it was a priority on consoles. Is there, I guess this would be 2 questions in one. Is the Nintendo Switch being the first one? I imagine that's just timed exclusivity and you want it everywhere. And how did it feel getting Peglin in like a Nintendo Indie Direct?
Yeah, it was pretty unreal. Our team is fully remote, and Nintendo wanted us to like film a little segment with multiple people in it. And so it was like, okay, like when are we gonna find the time to do this? And it just so lined up that a handful of us were going to Japan for Bit Summit. So we've been in Japan twice this year, which is a lot, but fun. And so we actually ended up filming this in like some random little office in Shinjuku, and just hired a cameraman for a couple $100 to come and do a pretty professional kind of looking setup, and really happy with how it turned out. But yeah, it was one of the wildest days of my life when that went live, and like every piece of social media that I owned was just exploding. And
Mhm.
I had people that I hadn't spoken to since high school being like, holy cow, like I saw you on Nintendo, like what is happening? Like it was crazy. Yeah.
I love Nintendo because they, like, I don't play too many of the Nintendo games. Their Switch is old, but I feel like they do a better job than PlayStation and Xbox with highlighting the indie developers and really giving them a stage to showcase their games. Hopefully, I can see Foul Damage in an indie showcase soon. Which can now lead, I guess, to talking a little bit more about Foul Damage, which is the game that Dylan, you helped a little bit, but May, it was kind of like your major project. So when did you start development on that?
Yeah, it started back in 2018. Just as a little prototype. It started from a joke of like, what if you had the little platformer guy who jumped too high and bonked his head and broke his legs and stuff. And so the very first version of the game was actually just like a little dude, and he would fall and just splat and just be like a 6 pixel wide corpse on the ground. But I had to remake the game from scratch pretty early on due to an engine update, and at that point that's really when kind of the theme, like the themes and the atmosphere that are still in Foul Damage today, kind of coalesced, where it's like, oh, a lot of it was just born from being a solo developer and not having a lot of time. Okay, black and white, that's easy. I don't need to worry about a color palette. Let's just do that. Oh, an egg is gonna like show the mechanic a lot better. Everyone knows that eggs break easy. It's also cuter. It's less gruesome than having these little Mega Man guy corpses all over the place. And just kind of went from there. Uh, like I mentioned before, kind of went on hiatus around 2020. But yeah, it was mostly solo developed. I'd say, for the most part, I was solo developing on it, which it's nice to have that creative freedom. It's also exhausting to have to do everything.
Everything, yeah.
Everything.
Yeah.
Every last thing, audio, music. Yeah. Um, you're not going to be as passionate about every piece of the puzzle when you have to make the whole thing. So part of working with Red Nexus was I had a bit of support, quite a bit of support in the last kind of 8 months before release, and that was so nice to have. Just to have that after so long of this being this like monumental thing that I have to make basically alone. That no, I have some help with programming, all the save game systems, Steam API. Here's some help with that. Had a little bit of help with some extra music. Okay, we need a few more tracks to really flesh out the game. Here you go. Here's some music, and it's really invaluable.
I can imagine. I'm nowhere near as talented as both of you with making video games. I just make some videos and stream some video games, but even then, I can relate to having to do absolutely everything. It just gets so exhausting.
Yeah.
But one big question that I had, was making like a physics-based platformer like you did with Fowl Damage. Was there anything that was like a major challenge that you didn't expect?
Mm, I think specifically pertaining to the physics. I'm not like, I don't want to downplay myself too much. Like I can program. I made Foul Damage, but I'm not a programmer first and foremost. Right? I call myself a game designer. The programming kind of is something I do to support my love and passion for game design. So I feel like there's some things that people who have more specific experience could have gotten done a lot more quickly than me. I rallied against making moving platforms work for so long, and it's a bit of a house of cards. But I did it. I have moving platforms, and you get carried by them, and they smush you. But that was a lot of screwing around for me, and I feel like it's so many games have made moving platforms in existence. Surely somebody else could have done this a lot quicker, but that's just kind of what it is when you're a solo dev.
You got to learn and adapt, which I've
Yeah.
played through. I think I'm on the fourth area in Foul
Mm.
Damage, and I've loved every little minute of it. It's been the perfect game for me to go play when I'm about to go to bed. Just pull out the Steam Deck. I guess I could ask, was making it for the Steam Deck, is that going to be an indicator that it will be available on other platforms? I'm pretty sure it's available on Switch, right?
No, not on Switch. It's only PC right now. Would definitely love to have it on other platforms. We're nothing to announce in that regard just yet, but I would love it to be on the Switch, of course. Yeah. The Steam Deck didn't even exist when I started working on the game, so it's kind of just a nice accident that it works well on it.
Now, I guess I can ask this to both of you because one of my favorite things with this game, I haven't been able to mess with it too much. And I feel like not many games have this anymore. And it's the user created levels. Do you have
Mhm.
any fan favorites that you've seen made?
Actually, so Matthew, who works on Peglin as a programmer, he's really taken a shine to the game, and he's probably the source of like most of the catastrophic bug reports I've received. And I shake my fist at him every time. Why did you find this? But he's made some interesting levels, let's say, over the months. But it's fun to see. That was kind of the hope for me with having a level editor, was being able to see your game pushed to limits that you kind of can't really push it to yourself as the game designer. Like I have to curate what the canon of the game is, but people in their own levels can just go nuts and really, push what the game is capable of, and that's been really great to see.
Now, outside of, I guess, the game making, you're both just, game designers, programmers. You both have said you would probably wish you could offload some of the work. Do you feel like marketing is one of the biggest challenges? Because I only had Foul Damage has about 56 reviews on Steam,
Yeah.
which I think is underrated. It's a great game. Do you feel marketing is probably one of the biggest tasks that is tough to tackle?
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, we got really, really lucky with Peglin there. And there's a bunch of particular challenges when it comes to like $0 marketing for indie games. And so with Foul Damage, we did a lot of the same legwork that we did for Peglin. And I think if it had released around the same time, it would have, shone a lot brighter and really like been seen by a lot more people. Because yeah, like with Peglin, we did all of that marketing during COVID. And so, we could just like, oh, we can be in the Bit Summit showcase in Japan and the Taipei game show like over there, and no actual travel. Like Peglin was featured in PAX East's like PAX Rising showcase, back when it was just PAX Online. And they were getting so much exposure out to online, and streamers and YouTubers would then pick up games that way and share them about. And so when it came time to market Foul Damage, everything was open again. And so we took that really like event focused strategy, but now it's, taking weeks of time out of
Mhm.
development and other marketing activities to physically bring the game over to Japan. Like we did that twice this year, took the game to Germany for a week. Like it's just, it just takes so much out of everything else that you're doing. And yeah, we really didn't see the same impact. Those events would still have Steam events, Steam featuring that during COVID, you'd see up to 3,000 wish lists a day. And like the PAX one in particular had just really incredible featuring for the indie game section, the PAX Rising section, and we were seeing about 300 wish lists a day. And so it was just, especially with how much the world was changing and how much game marketing was changing, it's tough. Like it's just, and even the biggest publishers, right? If you look at them, like everyone thinks Devolver has a hit rate of like 100%.
Yeah.
If you look at their actual like Steam publisher page, there's games on there that just never really haven't really heard of. It's the unfortunate reality, and we just kind of missed. And this is particularly painful for me because that was kind of my job on it, was the marketing. And it's if it was my own game, it'd be okay. Shoot. But the fact that I kind of let May down here with this game, 100% positive reviews. It's the critics love it. Kind of same issue we had in the past. So it sucks that we haven't been able to quite get it out there yet. But yeah, certainly haven't given up on it. Like you're saying about other platforms, we're trying to find the right partners now to really help push that forward into new regions and onto new areas and new platforms.
And we still have, we didn't lose our wish lists, so hopefully, maybe some people are just waiting for a bit of a higher sale or whatever, and we can still work away at converting some of those wish lists over time. But
we did ironically kind of make the same mistake that we did with Friday Night Bullet Arena.
Yeah.
And again, that's kind of on me because I thought the way Steam works, like replayability is so highly like featured and desired. I was like, well, let's get a level editor in there. That'll be great. And again, if we had just launched the game earlier without that for cheaper, and then could have, once we got it kind of off the ground, could have brought that back, would have been a better decision in retrospect.
Yeah, I think also when I was thinking about how to price it, I was thinking like, oh, well, it's got the game and it's got the level editor. It's like a great value add. But I feel like realistically, a lot of players are either going to be there for one or the other, right? You might have people who really want like that level editor experience, that like community ecosystem of trying out other levels, or you have people who are kind of I just want my little 4 to 5 hour story and something I can have a good time with and then be done with. So actually, I shouldn't it shouldn't have been like a pricing based off of the total. It should have been based off of like the highest. I don't know how to really explain that, but if that makes sense.
I imagine trying to think of the perfect price for indie games is not easy because people are used to paying $60, $70 for these AAA games that most of the time are just a complete mess. And then you get your small indie games. You got the games like Helldivers that are $40, infinite replayability. I even saw some reviews saying Peglin was too much money, which was $20 US. So I guess I could ask, what are some challenges trying to figure out that perfect price, like you said, with the level editor? Any strategies there, I guess?
I mean, I know the things you're supposed to do is like what are my competitors doing, stuff like that, but it's tough. Sorry, Dylan, you go ahead.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the exact same thing. It's like you kind of look at your competitors, and with Peglin in particular, I think it came out at a really tough time, where COVID was hitting, things were jumping up in price like crazy. We at the time, like I was the only person working on the game full time, so I kind of priced it as like high as I thought was reasonable. I could have, we like Vampire Survivors came out around the same time as us at like $3, and we launched at 20. And so I can see why people were frustrated by the price. But we also said like we're not going to do any paid DLC. We're not like you get all updates for free forever. And I think if you were to buy all of the Vampire Survivors add-ons now, like it's probably around the same price. But yeah, for us, for Peglin in particular, like we were kind of afraid that we'd get just so many players and not be able to handle it. Like our biggest fear was like we'd get enough players where it's now stressful and like needs community management, but we don't have enough money to hire a community manager. And so if we figured if we priced high, we could at least solve one or both of those problems. We'll see fewer sales, at least initially, because we were planning on being in early access for a while. And then if we did explode, we'd have enough money to hire a community manager and not spread ourselves too thin. With Fowl Damage, like we're cheaper than a lot of the other big platformers, but I think people are just, very sensitive on price right now. It's tough out there. I totally understand. And just until a game has been like really heavily vouched for by like a friend or a YouTuber that they respect, they're not willing to kind of drop that. Like, I personally think that Fowl Damage is priced very fairly. It's a little below $20 Canadian, but AAA games are 90 now,
Oh
like
my God,
94
Silent
or
Hill 2 was
something. So
$93 Canadian. It
Yeah.
was
the
horrible.
fact the fact that you can buy like 5 indie games for the price of one AAA game, like that feels like a reasonable ask for me. Um, but it just is what it is. And Foul Damage doesn't have those complaints about price. We just think that,
Hmm.
it's got a good chunk of wish lists, and probably more people would have taken a chance on it if it was cheaper. But the nice thing about that is, it kind of lets us fix up a few of the things that we've found, and then have the game go on sale over time, just like Peglin has. And yeah, it's a
Yeah.
hard choice. We've put a lot of thought and discussion into it for sure.
I will agree that I think it is also worth the money. I've played it for like 3 to 4 hours right now, paid like 18 Canadian bucks. And 3 to 4 hours of good entertainment for $18, that goes a long way. And
It-
I guess you have something to say, May? Sorry.
yeah. It was really important to me. Something with the game that I find really important was to like cut the fat, right? Like try and keep it focused and trim. I haven't actually double checked how true this is, but at least my feeling is that there's almost as much cut content as there is actual content in the game. Like there's a lot of old stuff that I tried and didn't work and got rid of it, or areas that I remade rather than like adding on to them. I was like, no, let's just kind of like refresh the whole thing, improve its overall quality rather than trying to pad it out. So while it might not be the longest game, I hope that at least it's a high quality ride through the whole thing. Seems like people have generally resonated with that too, which is nice.
I think it has been, and one thing I actually now I can, you just reminded me of it with the quality. You can easily just warp back in between whatever zone you want to, which for some reason I'm a masochist and I like collecting absolutely everything and trying to collect all the pink feathers and the green feathers and explore everything. It's super nice being able to just go back whenever I want to. So
Mm,
I agree that I think it's a very underrated game, and I think its time will come sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
And really, you guys just murdered all of my game-related questions, which was the big chunk. So I guess I can ask this: are there any games you guys are playing, not making, just playing and having a good time with?
Yeah, I'm a big JRPG fan. I guess I prefer books over games, but I've been working my way through Octopath Traveler 2, which I've been enjoying quite a bit. And then I've also been playing some Loop Hero, because
Oh,
and my
classic.
my team has heard me talk it to death, but I think as like a framework for an indie game, I think it's brilliant. Like, I think just like the scope of it, and just the kind of simplicity. Like, it's a fairly complex game, really, but it's communicated well, I think, to players. And yeah, I've been having just a really good time digging into it. That's been less of a playing it for fun, I think, and more of professional curiosity. But I've been pretty impressed with it for sure.
Oh, I love Loop Hero. What about you, May?
I've been playing UFO 50.
Oh yeah, everyone's been doing that
Which,
one still.
Nice.
holy moly. It's definitely, I don't know, I'm a little jealous for sure.
Yeah, that UFO 50. It's 50 goddamn games into
50
one
goddamn
game.
games.
I don't
Yeah.
know how big that development team is over there, but like I've seen a lot of people streaming it. That's an insanely
Hmm.
impressive game that I need to pick up still. But yeah, that's a good looking game as well.
There's one specific one called Mooncat, and I love it. I mean, it's not surprising I love it because I feel like it's got a lot of similar DNA to Foul Damage, but it's just like it's a weird platformer that starts off completely like, how do I even control this thing? And then it starts to become so intuitive, and I really like that one.
Yeah, all those games looked super well done, and I guess I can ask one more question to either of you before I let you go on with your day. And it's, if you have any questions for me, the guy that not makes the games, I don't make them, the guy that plays the games.
Yeah, what brought you to Alberta?
Alberta. Okay, so I lived in Ontario with my partner, and I'm a content creator, so I don't make a lot of money. And I was looking at places to move. British Columbia, nope. I don't have a
Nope.
car either because I can't afford that. I looked at like Saskatchewan and Manitoba, and then I found Alberta, and I was like, Edmonton seems like a nice city. That's where I am. Nice city, affordable. They got the Oilers, and that brought me here to the Great North.
Yeah. They have a fantastic game development community there too, actually.
I
'Cause
do.
that's where BioWare was started. And then as people, once you have like one big company, we call it kind of an umbrella company. Like people kind of get tired after a few years and they leave and they start their own stuff, and it just kind of creates a really healthy ecosystem. And yeah, people in Edmonton, the developers in Edmonton are fantastic.
Yeah, me and my partner were at a Tim Hortons, and this was like a few months ago, and we noticed that some people had like a little lanyard on with like a little PAX thing, but obviously it wasn't PAX Canada. That'd be too great to be true. And we're like, oh, is there like a game development thing going on here or something? There was some game expo that I never even heard of, and it was like right down the street, and I was like, oh man, we should have went to that. But yeah, Edmonton, great city. I love it.
Mm.
Any questions, May, for the gamer?
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah, it's okay if you have no questions. Don't worry. I always try to surprise
Sorry.
people at the end with
Yeah, you surprised me.
Yeah. What's I guess you kind of mentioned it when we were talking about it, but I was gonna say like your favorite loadout in Peglin. If there's one orb or relic that you could just like completely rehaul or remove from the game, what would that be?
Remove from the game. Any orb that makes me take damage. Like the orb with that orb that makes bombs go off immediately, but you take 2 damage when you throw it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a love-hate relationship with that orb because I never get the relic that like heals you on every reload or makes you take less damage from self-damage. So that relic or that orb it haunts me in my dreams because it shows up after every single level, and I'm just like, oh come on, please leave me alone. Just give me like a multi-ball. Give me a. It always shows up when I don't need it. Like give me the Spintation or something. But I also I love Peglin. It's also one of my just go-to games to just play. Like if I'm taking a big bus ride, I'll be like, oh, let me load up the Steam Deck, load up Peglin, load up Fowl Damage, just kill an hour. Love it. So
it was really nice getting the game on mobile because it's just like, oh yeah, now we can just play it on the plane as we're going somewhere, or yeah.
That must be a surreal feeling being able to just play a game like on a plane that you made, and you're just like, wow, this is. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have to pack the Steam Deck anymore, thankfully. That thing's a bit of a beast.
It is a beast. Just putting it in a backpack, I can't really pack much else.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate both of you, Dylan and May. Thanks for taking some time to join this small little Interview in Indies podcast. If you have anything to say to the people, this is your time to say it.
Yeah, please go try Fowl Damage. We still have the demo up, and if you like it, buy it. There's a level editor. There's some really cool custom levels that people have made, and I think there's something really special there. We just really want to get that in front of people.
Go play Peglin.
Peglin developer.
Peglin's gonna have a big update coming out probably next week sometime. So
I'm looking forward to that. Well, thanks everyone for listening and watching, and thank you again to Dylan and May for joining me. And
Thank you for having us.
We'll see everybody.
Thank you for having us. This has been a lot of fun.
Yeah, hell yeah. We'll see everybody next time. Thanks for listening or watching this episode of Interview in Indies. Big shout out to Dylan and May for both taking time out of their busy schedules to come talk on the show about Peglin and Fowl Damage. If you're an indie developer and you want to get on the show, shoot me an email or DM me on Twitter. And if you want the shows a few days early, be sure to subscribe to the show on Patreon to show some extra support. That would mean the world. Thanks again for listening or watching, and we'll see you next time.